Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Talking with Michael. How you doing? I'm Michael, and today we have Ron Kim. How you doing, Ron?
Good to see you, Michael. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you so much for coming today. You're a New York Assemblyman?
I am a New York State Assembly member, a member of the New York State Legislature. There's 150 of us in the New York State Assembly and 63 state senators, making 213 members of the state legislative body. And I am one of those members.
Wow. First, let's go a little bit into your background and
Sure.
Why would you even bother? You know, there's this thing about you never talk about politics, you never talk about religion, and you never talk about sex, and you decided to go in a path of helping people and constantly be put in a position to talk about politics.
Sure. I mean, it's not, to be honest, it wasn't the politics or the political world that drew me in.
Okay.
It was really the public service, and it was
Okay.
really about giving the community that I grew up in and the neighborhood a voice that they desperately needed. And I wanted my people and my community members, the immigrants, the immigrant families that I came from, to have a voice and a seat at that table when it comes to making decisions.
Now, your parents came to America when you were at a very young age.
Yeah, I was 7 when I came here. I was an immigrant. My parents came from South Korea. We moved to a place called Flushing, Queens, and those are it's one of the largest immigrant neighborhoods, I think, in the entire world. And when my parents came here, it was 1987. They've give up everything they had on their homeland to give themselves and me, the next generation, a better shot at success in life.
Now, in pop culture, as well as the media, you're hearing a lot of talk, immigrants. Sometimes spoken with love of the insight that we believe is the forefathers of this country,
Right.
embracing people of different cultural backgrounds, different religions. And then you also hear this nasty energy. When you hear both sides of that, even just the tone of immigrants, what's the first thing that pops into your mind?
Yeah, I feel like in the last couple of years, we've gone back decades of progress. You know, we've had a point when I was growing up, both Democrats, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're in, people respected the hard work and the dedication of new immigrants that came to this country. That was the core foundation of this country, a land where you can come in, and if you wanted to work hard, there should be plenty of opportunities for you to succeed. But I think what's been happening over the last few years is that the opportunities are not there anymore. By design, there was never enough money to go around for everyone. So instead of figuring out a long-term solution to open up, to expand that pie and add more seats to the table, we're stuck in this vicious rhetoric of demagogues blaming other minorities, refugees, immigrants problem. And it wasn't us that created the problem. The systemic failure was caused by people in concentrated power that go back many, many years. This didn't happen overnight. So instead of coming together and addressing those core problems that are enriching the very tiny few individuals and companies in the world who are sidelining the rest of us, that the people in power are trying to blame each other and cause conflict and rift at the bottom of the pyramid, you know, and at the triangle. And I don't think that's the way to move forward.
Now, how can we get more young people engaged? Actually, wait, how did you get engaged first?
Sure.
What was that aha moment? And then how do you think you can get younger people?
Yeah, and I grew up. My parents ran a small business, groceries. They were Korean grocers. You know, you see a lot of those. There's a stereotype growing up in the 70s and 80s.
Okay.
You went to almost every block. We had a Chinese takeout and a Korean grocer, right? And the Koreans came in for 20 years and just dominated this market, opening up the small shops. And I saw how hard it was when I was growing up. And I was there when they had to file for bankruptcy.
Wow.
And for 10 years, I saw my parents struggle in debt, borrowing money from friends to get back on their feet. And I always told myself that if I have a chance to to really step up and give this community, the small business, the immigrant community, the voice that they deserve, that I would do so.
That you would do so. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize the struggle it is to have your own business.
Oh,
It's not an easy
It's
thing.
extreme. And I realized after all these years of dissecting what happened to people like my parents, because it's very common. A lot of people open up, they borrow, they go into debt, they had to file for bankruptcy. We often hear about the glorified success stories, but behind
Right.
one success story, there are thousands of people who had to file for bankruptcy and who are struggling to pay interest on their loans. And it's a vicious cycle. And by design, I realized if the system was rigged to begin with, then it was designed for people to continue to just work hard and try to pay off their interest, but they never had a fair shot to make it really to the end as they had hoped to do. And I think and it's only gotten worse over the last few years because of the society that we live in, which is fundamentally debt-driven, to encourage the bigger corporations to only get bigger, suck up and extract as much money and value from the little guys in the bottom, and our government, our tax codes, everything that we do by design reward that kind of behavior.
So what was it for you? What was the moment you said, I'm going to get involved? I'm tired of talking and complaining and seeing firsthand because of your experience. You know.
The moment that I got to college, the moment I went to high school and I wanted to do other things besides just putting my head down and just getting the grades and trying to get I wanted to be outspoken. I wanted to change people's perception of what I could be as an Asian American man in this society, as a minority, as a person of color. I wanted to really challenge people's status quo, and that's what even at the young age, I realized that that's the first step. Your ability to step up and change things.
Do you remember the day? Were you in the cafeteria? What was the day that
it was the day that when we shut down my dad's grocery store, I was going into my freshman year in high school.
Wow.
And my dad asked me to come by. It was on a Friday late afternoon, in 207th and Broadway, and we had a store there, and we spent 5-6 hours just smashing the fruits and vegetables, just trashing all the garbage and just taking hammers and just destroying all the equipment that we've had to just throw it out. And I don't know why. It took me so many years to figure out why we did that when we were just shutting the store down.
Right.
And I realized my dad, it was his only outlet. He couldn't complain to anyone. He couldn't get any help. There was no government agency, no elected official, no person trying to step up and give him a hand. So the only outlet that he had of frustration was just to spend those hours just destroying his own, machines and products just out of anger and fury.
Wow.
And that was a very awakening moment for me. And I never want anyone to experience that kind of despair in this state, in this country.
So let's fast forward. You went to school, you got your master's, and then when did you say, I want to run?
I entered public service to help people, and I worked for a number of elected officials, government agencies, nonprofits, help people's campaigns. But it was only when the former council member in my local district who ran for a citywide seat, it became the first Asian American city comptroller, a guy named John Liu, who's been a good friend and a mentor of mine. It was when he went for citywide, I wanted to fill his seat. I was 29 years old at the time, and I spent 7-8 years on the ground, and I thought that I was the most qualified person with the values to be the next council member in the district. I ran for 2 months. It was excruciating. It was a learning experience. I failed miserably. I didn't even make the ballot. I didn't get one endorsement. It was a crowded field. I got bullied around, but it was a very tough but rewarding experience, because it was then when I realized there's a big difference between public service and politics.
Wow.
The political world is very cutthroat and it's very vicious, and you have to know how to play the game to win elections.
Well, playing the game, you endorsed the DREAM Act?
I did. I've been a co-sponsor and of the Dream Act since I've been in office.
Okay.
We passed it in our house for 6 consecutive years. It's the Republican-held Senate that won't get it done in the state, and this isn't there's a difference between the federal Dream Act and the statewide Dream Act. A number of other states, including Texas, have their own Dream Act. They understand the importance of education. So what it does is it opens up all sorts of funding and scholarships for students who want to go get educated in a public school, high education system, regardless of your immigrant status. So in our public school system, we already subsidize all these undocumented students from K to 12. We don't ask the status of whether you have immigrant status.
Right. Yeah.
So they go to school. And then we stop funding them the moment they want to go to college. And I think our biggest fear has to be among those people that will leave behind. There is another Steve Jobs. There is another, amazing entrepreneur, professional, doctor, lawyer that could change the world. But we're leaving them behind, and we're not thinking long term. We're not thinking collectively enough because we're too busy pointing fingers at each other. That why are we going to help this, person of color, minority, immigrant, when we can't even get, food on the table for our own children back here. Like we got to have a deeper understanding of our current situation.
Now it's interesting because I hear so many people talk about, hey, we need to do this. It's about Americans, it's about citizens, it's about those that want to be citizens. But all this red tape and all the stuff that goes on that a lot of people aren't privy to. How could we, in your opinion, how could we take that jump to start thinking about people?
Yeah. Yeah.
And get things done? I mean, do you feel it changing more in that direction, or?
I think it's gonna get worse than it gets better. I mean, the rhetoric, the politics, the national hatefulness that's coming down the pipeline, where we're not looking at each other as human beings. We're not collaborating. We're not thinking holistically. We're too busy vilifying each other. We're still demonizing others' cultures, and that's not the way to live. And I think part of the problem, this is also population shift. More and more people are living in cities, migrating into cities. The United Nations have predicted that by 2030, more than 60% of the world's population will be living in cities by then.
Wow.
So people are aggressively moving to cities.
Hold on, who's farming?
That's what I'm saying. People are leaving behind the farming, agriculture, and everywhere in the world. They're getting incentivized to move into the cities because people think that's a better quality of life, and they can get ahead that way. But that is not a natural transition at all. People have to understand that the agricultural farmers, they add so much value to humanity, to our people's growth. Right. People-to-people growth is so tremendous. The peer-to-peer relations and growth should be the focus. But we live in such a corporate, vertically integrated mindset world that they just think, we got to get to the city, we got to get a corporate job, we got to get to work for Uber, we got to get Amazon. That's what their mindset is. And no, that's not the direction that we're going to try to go to. Like technology right now is still at its infancy phase. We haven't seen the true value of technology yet. Facebook, Twitter, this is the beginning.
Wow.
And I think in the future, we can truly go back to being more humans, to human-like, and really learn how to collaborate and work better together as a community.
So how do you get young people to get involved? Because at the end of the day, at some point, you will be that dude, that old man complaining. At some point. So how do we get that next generation to get involved?
They're already in their own unique way. You have to respect the young generations stepping up and redefining our economies, the way they're thinking about money, they're thinking about our macroeconomics, entirely different than our generation. We still grew up in a generation where we valued owning a car at some point, or I'm gonna get my license 16. I can't wait to save some money and get that.
And all the movies that came out about driving.
Right, I'll get my Cadillac or Lincoln or whatever it is that we grew up,
Right.
fantasizing about, right? But this generation is not about ownership. This generation is about access, networking. They grew up with the smartphone like attached on their hands,
And
right?
social media.
Social media, social networking, and genuine peer-to-peer connections. And they would rather pay to get access to the right network than having ownership of an apartment or a condo, because they realize we're in a whole different landscape. We could
But
share
isn't
that.
that a danger in a way? Because now you have a generation that doesn't see the value of owning anything.
Sure.
You know?
But it's a danger to people who are defending the conventional economic treadmill
Gotcha.
that need people to take out that loan to be in debt for life. And people are literally in debt for life. There's $1.5 trillion of student debt alone.
Okay.
80% of Americans living paycheck, barely making the interest payment right now, and that's by design.
Wow.
So I think when this generation comes into full power of having that consumer and economic clout in our society, they have the tools and the power to reshift the way we think about money and our economic paradigm. I think, in my opinion, for the betterment, to push us to think more collectively, to push us to share better. I mean, in this neighborhood outside, we can have a sharing economy. We have plenty of space around here to have our own self-sustainable urban farm-like places. We can grow our own vegetables and fruits and whatnot, and really, encourage people to share that kind of activity. There's so many different things we can do to be more neighborly, to be more human-like, but we're not doing that because we're so busy trying to get to that point B and just hustling and being cutthroat and competitive.
Now, what do you think is adding to that? Do you think it's the media? Do you think it's
a combination.
Just a cultural thing? Or it's just life is hard?
It's a combination of all
And
those
people
things.
want to escape.
Yeah, it's a combination of all those things. 10 years ago, man, we had the biggest financial crisis, but who's actually still talking about it? Which policymaker this year marks the 10th year? What do we do? What are we doing differently than 10 years ago?
Well, in real estate, a lot of the conversations that I've had, we're due for an adjustment. So it could happen at any day.
It's inevitable. It's a matter of when. I think the bust in our real estate and our economy, it's going to be catastrophic. It's not going to be like 10 years ago, because we're not going to have a federal government that's going to bail anyone out this time, because the public won't have it.
Wow.
10 years ago, they bailed out the banks. All those banks got away scot-free.
Yeah, right.
Where did all the people who owed us mortgages? They were left on the curb. And the public is not going to have it, and the international community don't have the capital and access to bail anyone out.
Right.
So we need to start thinking about it. Elected officials, policymakers, we've got to start having honest conversations about how to get to be more resilient at the local level. So when things go really bad at the top macro level, like we can still withstand that and still stay strong at the very neighborhood level.
But my vote doesn't count. And I don't care what you're talking about. I don't want to vote.
Right. Yeah.
But what's your response to that?
And
it's not real. It doesn't matter.
And I don't blame the people who are apathetic to the process,
right?
Because that is also by design, by people in power, to make it as difficult for that person to vote. We're sitting here with all sorts of technologies around us. Why is it so hard to vote? Why can't we just, freaking register on a smartphone and get it done instantaneously?
Because Johnny will hack it.
Right. I don't think so, man. We have so much technology. We have blockchain. We have all sorts of tools to prove, but the political will and the money won't do it, because people in power are so scared. That if you really engage and give every voter on the ground an access to that booth, they won't be in power.
Okay.
They won't be in power because they want to elect people that look like me and you. Right? They want to they want more women. They want more people, immigrants, But people in power right now they don't look like me and you, right? So it's 2018, and they're still trying to hold on to that power to the last possible second.
Well, it's interesting because if it was a number game, and this is why I want to have this conversation, because it really is a number game. They say, well, the 1%. Yeah, but it's 1%.
Right. Yeah.
So before the internet shuts me down, I just want people to think.
Yeah.
It's just 1%.
Right. But it's the 1% influencing the next 25% who are on that treadmill,
That
right?
feel that they're better than the other X amount.
Who are working
crabs
hard,
in a barrel.
that are speeding it up the treadmill because they think the faster they run,
they can be part of
they
the
can
1%.
be part of 1%, and they're just merging, buying companies, expanding and growing at exponential rates. That's not sustainable. We can't be growing at this rate. It's just not natural for us to do it. We're gonna be busting anytime soon. But the people, elected officials that they fund, that they give money to, the people who are in power, all they're trying to do is keep that party going for as long as possible.
Can that party keep going?
It's gonna crash. It's just like any party.
It's gonna crash.
It's gonna crash. But their mindset is, for now, my job as an analyst here, or a councilman here, a governor here, a mayor here, is to keep this party going as long as possible. And I don't think that's the right approach.
Will things get better?
I think we need more of us to slow down that economic treadmill.
Okay.
I think we need people to have honest conversations about money and our debt-driven society. And I think things will then, little by little, get better. And we need to allocate more resources to local economic growth. Right now, we're doing everything we can to extract as much value and money from local communities so big corporations can continue to fund their back vertical supply chains. What if we design programs to keep local dollars rotating and circulating as much as possible at the neighborhood level? Those are the things that we should be talking about. Like, no more of the chain stores.
There's a lot of money that leaves New York.
Oh, absolutely.
How do we keep that money in New York to do that? Because, for instance, you talked about there are a lot of immigrant children that go to school for free.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, at least in the neighborhood that I was living in, there were tons of people that were from other places.
Yeah.
And living in homes and a large amount of families, but you had several families, but only one person was paying the no worries, paying like the taxes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Is there a way to support those communities in that way? Or like, well, can we bring taxes down a little bit to help? Because it's not one-sided thing. Because again, if you're not paying taxes, it becomes a burden. Yeah. People lose their homes. It becomes this cycle.
Yeah. Now, we can redesign the tax code in so many different ways to help local growth, to help people keep their local investments and dollars at the neighborhood level. But that's not what we're doing. All we're doing is rewarding the big mergers and acquisitions and monopolies that are coming in to take over big corporations, because at the end of the day, those things, the politicians that are in power think are the only things that add to the GDP value. But we need to wake up and realize that it is the local people who are at home taking care of our parents. Those things have real economic value, and it's about time that we capture that and help those people who are contributing at the local level continue to do so, because at this point, we're not capturing that value.
Wow. What keeps you going? Well, you know what? When you have obstacles, when you feel, what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? Those moments. What keeps you going?
Every day I try to find a deeper purpose behind what I'm doing in my public service. Whether it's policy or whether it's the people that I represent, I really try to do deep dives and dissect every single problem and issue that I encounter. And those are the things that keep me going. And I go to bed, thinking, reading, hearing about all sorts of issues and problems. And I wake up in the morning, continue to read and research about those topics. And it's that sense of deep purpose and passion for public service that really keeps me going.
Family supportive?
Family's good. Yeah, my family. My wife she's about to have her, our third baby. So
Congratulations.
thank you. And so I'm looking forward to that. So obviously, just there's no better time. There's no happier moment for me than just unplugging everything. And just, what I call totally getting off the grid and just being with my kids and my family. And I think more of us as people should have the luxury and time to enjoy those moments in life, just to be with their loved ones and not care about whatever's going around above us, around us, and just enjoy those moments and be happy. And I don't think people they don't have that anymore. They don't have that sense of happiness, and it's easy for people like Donald Trump and other demagogue types to come in and exploit that unhappiness, that unrest, right? To start saying you are not getting that paycheck, you lost that job, and you're not happy because of that immigrant, because of that criminal, because of this and that. We've seen this play out in history over and over. Economic distress, some nut job, crazy, with the personality, because they have to get people, right, to follow. They step up and everything, it becomes centralized. People gravitate toward it. And it is the concentration of power and the centralization process that I despise. So how do we distribute that power? How do we decentralize that power so we can own our own happiness at the local level without relying on people in DC or Albany or City Hall? And I think that should be the goal of our democracy.
So what are you running? You're up for election.
I'm up for re-election. I don't have an opponent, I don't think, knock on wood, for this year. And
Okay.
I'm just focused on the issues, and I have a general election. I'm raising money and I'm campaigning when I have time. But I'm also looking forward to going back to session, assuming that the re-election goes smoothly, so I can get back to work.
Wow. Yeah. So the takeaway, hopefully, anyone out there, anyone eligible to vote, is vote. Because a lot of people are saying this election is one of the most important elections. Would you agree with that statement?
I agree with 100%. And the only way to change our disconnected, corporate-driven politics is for our young people, the people who should be at the table, to come out and vote. That's number one. But stay engaged, hold elected officials accountable to make sure that they passed laws and policies that really promotes democratic values, and don't just give money away to the concentrated few in our society.
It's interesting when people say my vote doesn't matter. I always look, well, why would lobbyists spend so much money? Why would big business spend so much money if it didn't matter?
Yeah, they do, the campaigns, the lobbyists, the big groups, they spend so much money to suppress voters, to make politics and campaigning as ugly as possible, so they don't want to come out. They get so disgusted by the process, and most of the time that's the main reason why they don't vote. They get all this negativity, they get all this ugliness, and the instantaneous social media sometimes, like the Twitters, they're not issue focused. They often go after people's characters, and it's very disheartening sometimes. So they check out. They're like, you know what? I don't want to deal with these type of people that are so, hateful and whatever. They just don't want to participate anymore. But again, in order for things to change, you have to show up, and you have to demand change from the inside out. So we're seeing that, and we're gonna see more people, in my opinion, the next couple of years to come out, especially young voters.
How could people support the things that you're doing and follow you?
Yeah, you could always reach out to me. All the topics that we discussed, whether it's helping local economic development, small business, immigrants, just reached out to me. You could info@ronkim.com. That's something, it's an email that I check every day. And you can check me out on ronkim.com.
That's awesome. Any words of wisdom, some sort of takeaway from all your experience, if you were able to sum it up, what would it be?
I think you got to find purpose in whatever you do.
Okay.
Be passionate about it. Be unapologetic. Don't care about how others judge you and how others validate you, and just do your thing to the end. See it through.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ron.
Thank you, Michael.
I'm Michael, and you're watching Talking with Michael. Thank you very much for supporting and checking us out. Have a good one.